I'm a soulless lawyer. Give me any opinion, and I can argue it. Megan Kelly. If you've read my book, The Feminist Lie, then you'll know that feminists lie about everything related to their ideology. And when they get caught on these lies, they often double down. With that in mind, I'm going to introduce you to two attorneys. The first is Orlando attorney Elizabeth Failla. Given that she's been practicing law for 40 years, I'm thinking this picture may not be accurate. According to her law firm's website, she's a personal injury attorney who's been practicing law since 1976. Ms. Failla is a member of the Inner Circle of Advocates, the most prestigious and selective attorney organization in America. Membership is limited to the top 100 plaintiff trial attorneys in the entire nation. In addition, Ms. Failla is board certified in civil trial law by the Florida Bar, an accomplishment only 7% of eligible attorneys achieve. Since 1983, Elizabeth has kept her certification current and was awarded a 25-year certificate for her efforts in 2008. Throughout her distinguished 40-year career, Ms. Failla has won multiple verdicts and settlements of $1 million or higher. Now, the second attorney is Deborah L. Rode, who, according to her bio at the Stanford School of Law, states, Deborah L. Rode is the Ernest W. McFarland Professor of Law, the director of the Center on the Legal Profession, and the director of the program in Law and Social Entrepreneurship at Stanford University. She is the most frequently cited scholar on legal ethics. She has received the American Bar Association's Michael Frank Award for contributions to the field of professional responsibility, the American Bar Foundation's W.M. Keck Foundation Award for distinguished scholarship on legal ethics, the American Bar Foundation's Outstanding Scholar Award, the American Bar Association's Pro Bono Publico Award for her work on expanding public service opportunities in law schools, and the White House's Champion of Change Award for a lifetime's work in increasing access to justice. She is the founding chair of the Association of American Law Schools section on leadership, a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and vice chair of the Board of Legal Momentum, formerly the Now Legal Defense and Education Fund. And for those who don't know, NOW is a national organization of women. She is the founding president of the International Association of Legal Ethics, the former president of the Association of American Law Schools, the former chair of the American Bar Association's Commission on Women in the Profession, the former founding director of Stanford's Center on Ethics, a former trustee of Yale University, and the former director of Stanford's Institute for Research on Women and Gender. She also served as senior counsel to the minority members of the Judiciary Committee, the United States House of Representatives, on presidential impeachment issues during the Clinton administration. Professor Rode graduated Phi Beta Kappa and summa cum laude from Yale University and received her training from Yale Law School. After clerking for Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, she joined the Stanford faculty. She is the author or co-author of over 30 books in the area of professional responsibility, leadership, and gender. She has served as a columnist for the National Law Journal and published editorials in the New York Times, Washington Post, Boston Globe, and Slate. Recent publications include Women in Leadership, Adultery, The Trouble with Lawyers, What Women Want, Lawyers as Leaders, The Beauty Bias, Legal Ethics, Gender and Law, Moral Leadership, and Access to Justice. Deborah Rode, in 2010, published an opinion article in the Washington Post entitled, Why Looks Are the Last Bastion of Discrimination. In it, she argues, quote, over the past half century, the United States has expanded protections against discrimination to include race, religion, sex, age, disability, and in a growing number of jurisdictions, sexual orientation. Yet bias on appearance remains perfectly permissible in all but one state and 6 cities and counties. Across the rest of the country, looks are the last bastion of acceptable bigotry. In a survey by the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, 62% of its overweight female members and 42% of its overweight male members said they had been turned down for a job because of their weight. And it isn't just weight that's at issue, it's appearance overall. According to a national poll by the Employment Law Alliance in 2005, 16% of workers reported being victims of appearance discrimination more generally. a figure comparable to the percentage who in other surveys say they have experienced sex or race discrimination. Really? While I could go into detail about why employers wouldn't want to hire obese employees, I'd just be repeating the video I already did on the subject entitled Fat Lives Matter. A link to it is in the description. As far as overall appearance is concerned, of course employers are going to be rightly concerned about this. If you were an employer, would you want to hire a radical feminist who showed up for her interview with facial piercings, tattoos all over her body, and smelling like a combination of stale period blood, halitosis, and cigarettes? What about if your applicant was so fat that when they showered, they didn't clean half their body because they couldn't reach it? Or what about a recovering drug addict with 3 yellow teeth and permanently bloodshot eyes? I mean, even Deborah Road, a woman so ugly that she looks like she took the One Ring and became the Gollum of the legal profession, was not only able to get a job, but by all empirical measures has been extremely professionally successful. Not only that, but this law goblin got some thirsty simp to marry her. Yep, she's married. To another attorney, no less. This feminist law goblin's life completely debunks the false narrative that ugly women can't be professionally successful. So now you know a little bit about these two attorneys. Let's get to the actual subject of the video, shall we? In the September 2018 issue of The Atlantic, Lara Bezalon penned the article, "What It Takes to Be a Trial Lawyer If You're Not a Man." In it, she states, quote, "Last year, Elizabeth Fela took a case representing a man who alleged that a doctor had perforated his esophagus during a routine medical procedure. Before the trial began, she and the defense attorney, David O. Doyle Jr., by the way, this guy is a fucking shitlord, were summoned to a courtroom in Brevard County, Florida, for a hearing. Doyle had filed a motion seeking to, quote, preclude emotional displays during the trial, not by the patient, but by Fela. This is gold. This is amazing. The counsel for the plaintiff, Elizabeth Fela, has a proclivity for displays of anguish in the presence of the jury, including crying, Doyle wrote in his motion. Fela's predicted flood of tears, he continued, could be nothing more than a shrewdly calculated attempt to elicit a sympathetic response. Fela told the trial judge, a man, that Doyle's allegations were sexist and untrue. Well, of course they were. The judge then denied Doyle's request, saying, in essence, I expect both parties to behave themselves. When I asked Fela for a copy of Doyle's motion, she said she could send me examples from more than 24 cases across her 30-year career. She said that at least 90% of her courtroom opponents are male and that they file a no-crying motion as a matter of course. So let's break this down for a second. Elizabeth Fela, one of the most successful personal injury attorneys in Florida and possibly the United States, is often subject to no-cry motions by her legal opponents. However, based on the article, none of the attorneys who file these motions are ever sanctioned for them, which means the judges knew and understood that there was some good faith basis, even if the judge subsequently denies the motion. Now, men who are actually red-pilled know from experience that women are capable of faking emotions. Some, like my first ex-wife, can even cry big alligator tears on demand. Filing a no-cry motion just seems like good jurisprudence, not sexism, especially if the female attorney has a reputation for manipulation through emotional displays. Later in the article, the author admits she's an attorney. Regarding her own practice, she states, in the 7 years I worked as a deputy federal public defender, I fought hard for my clients, and I had my share of victories. Then she goes on to state, in 2017, after nearly a decade of holding jobs that offered limited opportunities to go to court, I took a position as a clinical professor at the University of San Francisco School of Law. The sad part here is that she can't even avoid contradicting herself in the space of 2 paragraphs. That's right. These 2 quotes are the lead sentences of 2 paragraphs, one after another. So which is it? Was she a federal public defender who went to court all the time and won at least as often as she lost? Or was she a federal public defender who never went to court? You see, these 2 statements are mutually exclusive. Then when she talks about Deborah Rhodes' report, The Unfinished Agenda, remember, she's the feminist law goblin who successfully sold the false narrative that ugly women cannot be successful attorneys. Now, While this report admits that there are more women in law schools than men, her report conflates equality of outcome with equality of opportunity. In essence, her report argues that without equality of outcome, there can be no equality of opportunity. Make no mistake, Law Goblin is advocating communism. Now, I've included a link to this report in the description for those who wish to read it. It's about as dishonest as Law Goblin's other lies I've discussed previously in this video. When it comes to these three feminist attorneys, the easily verifiable facts and the observable reality clearly demonstrate that each one of them is far more successful than the majority of the male attorneys practicing law throughout the United States. But all three still cling to the feminist lie of victimhood.